Maybe you've heard the term Zenkov being thrown around? That in itself isn't anything, it's just a portmanteau of Zenless and Tarkov, but there's a reason for it. ZZZ's fighting game inspiration was worn on its sleeve, be it outside the game like with the Street Fighter 6 roundtable, or inside like with motion inputs for attack variations. Another aspect that the game took inspiration from were roguelites. You know, that whole initial implementation of Hollow Zero exploration through the TVs, with ever-building corruption, limited ways to heal, and randomized buff options. Although that didn't last long, it carried over to the other Hollow Zero modes, like Lost Void, having Slater Spire-esque map layouts and randomized buffs, items, bosses, and so on. But turns out that there is one more genre that ZZZ is being inspired by, and that's extraction games. I was asked to have a look at Operation Bagel while on the creator server, a new game mode that works as an alternative to the current Hollow Zero. It has a set of weeklies that build bounty commission points, is a way to stack up on Z merits, and even has uprated characters for an extra boost. Even tactical prisms are still a thing, but they need to be worked towards, like by getting their blueprints from a store. It's a bit more involved than either the previous Hollow Zero or the rather obvious pilot for the mode, Bootopia. So let's have a quick overview on how it all works in glorious 21:9 aspect ratio. There's a tutorial that's relatively comprehensive in-game, but we'll go through the basics here anyways. The gameplay loop is straightforward. Load into a stage, grab loot, be it from boxes or from enemy drops, extract with the loot, then use said loot for long-term progression. As the stage begins, there's a planning phase. The map shows up and a 30-second countdown starts ticking. During this time, evaluate which places are likely to have high-value supplies or strong enemies, which themselves can drop items. Sometimes events can trigger when entering, like data recovery, which demands tracking down specific locations first, often being a priority. Once the countdown ends or you exit manually, you're greeted with a starting cache of items that can be taken to help with the run. If you, say, don't have agent gear or equipment, this can be used to fill in for what's missing. Although there will be boxes thrown about, it's going to be better to focus on prioritizing the higher value ones, the strong boxes. The best of them require manual unlocks but have much better loot. Although be sure that there aren't any enemies around before opening them. In fact, it may be better to engage enemies in combat directly, as they don't need to be bosses to drop items, making them useful targets. Doubly so because the high value supplies that show up on the map are going to be guarded by strong enemies. Strong boxes can be found out and about, but these are where you're certain to get them. I do mean it when I say guarded. The drop from a boss enemy is usually going to be great, but don't walk away thinking that's that and abandon the strong box nearby. And just because a place has a strong ethereal doesn't mean it's got a strong box. The red map icons can be used as guides for the ones guarding some, so if there's no icon, there's no guarantee for one. But it is always worth a double check. Plenty of places on the map will have unmarked strong boxes with ethereals guarding them, so don't discount a place simply because it has no marker. Likewise, if you see a strong box suspiciously out in the open, there's probably an enemy right by it, so get ready to engage. For all this effort, there's nothing stopping you from looting literal trash cans. Who knows, maybe something useful will be inside. In missions, there'll be quest markers that can be taken for the ability to get additional loot. They'll point you to a location with an objective, and once complete, the dropped items are likely to be high value. Just keep in mind that as the value of supplies increases, so too are the chances of Hound Ulidim spawning. It frequently dodges attacks, and even those that hit and do damage won't reflect on its health bar. It's completely invulnerable. It will chase the player, and you can choose to run away from it. Avoid confronting it for long enough, and it'll get tired of you, giving up pursuit. Or you can turn around and engage it. Be careful though, as every single one of its strikes will immediately max out the corruption gauge. Most enemy strikes won't build it, just deal damage. But note that sometimes enemies will do blue flash attacks. If these hit, then they'll build corruption. Don't be too hasty on swapping out of lingering hitboxes after a parry, as any damaging hit will do it. And if you do parry a blue flash attack, it won't lead to a regular defensive assist. Pyroas will come out on field instead. These are outta type skills, one of which can be used to ambush enemies that haven't yet spotted you. This works even if you're mid-combat, so long as the enemy being targeted isn't in it. If there's no ambush targets though, it's still possible to get a strong slash mid-combat, which interrupts and deals heavy damage when enemy's special shield is depleted. Or as a way to parry blue flash attacks, which can sometimes lead to an execute finisher for extra damage. There are some restrictions. Auto-skill ambushes have limited uses. Strong slashes will interrupt the active character's action, so don't just use it as soon as it comes up. And parries won't always lead to executes, demanding 3 parries on A or S rank enemies to unlock it. Still, both the strong slash and parries are quote-unquote free. In fact, parries won't even use up assist points, which makes them very useful to avoid the corruption build from blue flashes. That's important, because if corruption maxes out, all agents' max HP is reduced. In the case of the Hound, it will immediately trigger this with every attack, even red flashes. Parrying it then is very important. not just to avoid getting left with 1 point of max HP on your agent, but because doing so will reduce its special shield. Once it's fully expired, the Hound will leave, and it's back to exploring. Although, if you've taken on too much corruption, it may be better to extract immediately. That's where the Etheric Phantom mechanic comes in. These are equipable items that can be consumed for special effects, ranging from high in-combat damage to transforming into an ethereal with stealth properties, being able to bypass fights entirely and still get to loot or important locations, such as fishes, which allow for instant travel to other places. These can be especially handy when trying to avoid Cacophony Soundscapes, being green areas on the map that will slowly increase with time. Being inside of them will continuously build corruption, regardless of enemy attacks. All loot is corrupted too, so picking any of them up will increase the corruption gauge further. And naturally, so do our enemies, which may spawn on the zone and will do so with a special shield field, making fights more taxing. Phantoms of the Hound will spawn too, but these can be killed. In fact, doing so is a priority, as it will eventually materialize into the real thing if left for too long. Not like that stops the Hound from spawning altogether, as grabbing high-value loot can still summon it, which can be a problem if you have some of your agents dead, so make use of the emergency medical pods lying around to bring them back to life. Although that isn't going to remove the corruption max HP decrease. When everyone's sitting at 1 max HP, engaging the Hound might not be ideal. At times like these, stealthing away and extracting early is probably for the best. Being aware of Cacophony Soundscape areas then is pretty important. Since it's constantly expanding, which you can see as a meter on the side of the map, it might just catch you by surprise, so be ready for it. I'll admit that Otta's avoiding can get tiresome, and fighting back is always an option. Not just against the Phantoms, but the Hound itself. Cacophony Soundscapes will keep increasing, but only up to a limit, after which the Nightfall State is activated. The Hound will continuously attack. Even when its shield is broken, it will only go into a stun state and not abandon pursuit. As soon as stun expires, it's back to chasing and attacking. That's actually a good thing, as in the Nightfall State, it may execute an attack that will drag agents to the Hound domain when it hits. Here, the Hound takes reduced damage from Order skills and Etheric Phantoms, but it takes damage, which means it can be killed. Just make sure that you do get hit by the attack though, as avoiding it or triggering invulnerabilities, like those from Ramiel, will prevent it from entering the domain. And since it usually takes a long time for Nightfall State to arrive, and then even more time for the Hound to use the attack, you might find yourself with the resources to kill him, but no time left. There's no last stand here. Once the clock runs out, the investigation ends. This will also happen if the whole team wipes or you exit by the ask menu, all leading to failed runs. And when that happens, all items are dropped. That means it's not simply the loot from pickups, but character gear, equipment, and any valuables too. Technically, it's not all items, as those kept inside the safe will still come through, but everything else is game. Thankfully, lost items can be recovered. Collectee will hold on to them where the investigation ended, so you can get them back. Do make sure to bring in inventory items though. There's little use in recovering your loot if you don't have the room to bring back most of it. So rather than taking your chances on the Hound, it's usually best to shoot for the final battle, a boss encounter which you have to commit to once entering, and regardless of the Cacophony Soundscape state, its arena will always rapidly build up corruption. But clearing it will spawn an exit node and guarantee an extraction of the run. To be fair, the same happens with the Hound too. With how often it interferes with runs, it may be worth beating it up every once in a while. It drops great loot itself and lets you pick between an immediate extraction or a return to the map, although it's likely there won't be much time left for the latter. That's in large part because if you take too long, most exits out of the hollow will have timed out. There's 3 kinds: combat extractions, which need to have nearby enemies defeated before the point opens; paid extractions, which demand gear coins or materials for activation; and boss extractions, which come up after a final battle victory or the Hound kill. By the time the Nightfall State is up, combat and paid extractions will likely have timed out, so the only way to get out without losing all the gathered loot is going to be through bosses. Either way, once extracted, the cycle repeats. Load in, grab loot, be it from strongboxes or from enemies, then extract away. That has you slowly accumulate resources to tackle harder challenges. So far, I've covered the hard mode, but there's one above it: high risk. It differs in a lot of ways. First of all, before going into a run, you have the ability to invest. This increases the chances of finding higher value supplies on every drop and crate, but in turn makes enemies tankier and have them do more damage. I foolishly decided to invest a maximum 2.5 million in one go, and enemies were so tanky that a normal mob encounter took a full 2 minutes of in-game time to clear with the level 40 yellow gear that was available to me on the creator server. Regular boss enemies walking around took so little damage that the only way I could kill was by spamming ambushes. Even when I killed it, the cost of exit was so expensive that I couldn't afford it. Unlike the other difficulties, there are no emergency medical pods at high risk, so once an agent dies, they stay dead. Which was a frequent occurrence as getting touched by enemies was an instant kill. A full wipe and high risk also gives no way to recover items. Failing an investigation means losing everything outside of the save forever, so you better make sure that the mission is going to be a success. Even if items could be recovered, there's no cash at the start to top up in items for it, so you need to be fully outfitted again before attempting another run. Naturally, this isn't meant to be tackled to level 40 gear. Items don't cap out at S rank 40, they don't even cap out at S rank 50, they go all the way to Z rank 60. With the limited time available to me, I didn't have the opportunity to climb up the ranks and craft the highest tier of gear, but that's really the ultimate goal. The point of going in for investigations and extracting out with loot is to get stronger. Unlike Hollow Zero, rather than having all agent stats carry over, but with a power adaptation feature that brings the weaker ones up to par, Operation Bagel has most of its progression be derived from equipment within the mode. Drive discs have no effect whatsoever. Orphe might have a plus 32.5% crit rate bonus at base, but then even after multiple Aftershocks or Shadow Harmony equipped, the crit rate doesn't change. Its gains are entirely void. Something's a little weird here though. How come Orphe has 32.5% bonus crit rate? Her core passive gives 25% and Bellicore's Blaze is 20%. There should be 45% at the very least. That's because Agent, Vengeance, skills, and even core passive levels all scale with Operation Bagel's gear, that being its Tactical Prisms. With the low level of Tactical Prisms I had equipped on Orphe, her core passive was still at level 1, that being before the A node is even unlocked, giving her only 12.5% in crit rate. Likewise, Seed's Vengeance provides 24% crit rate at level 60, but if she's wearing equipment that's at level 15, then the Vengeance 2 will be set to level 15, so she only gets a fraction of that. All agents are normalized. Drive discs don't matter, neither do levels for just about anything. Strength is tied to progression within the mode, so any character in the account is usable. There are some things that do still carry over. Mindscapes are respected, so don't worry, Pyros isn't going to be stuck at M0 for the mode, and the plus suitor skills from M3 and M5 are added on top of fixed gear levels. Vengeance are too. Not levels, but the Vengeance themselves. If Seed is equipped with Cecia's Vengeance, then that's the one that's going to be scaled. If she's using her own signature, then that's used instead. Vengeance effects apply, and since it doesn't scale with level, they're always up and full, and overclocking Vengeance phases will translate to high stats as a result. So vertical investment, be it in agents or their Vengeance, do translate. Still, being at M6B5 won't mean much if your agent is stuck at level 5. Most power is derived from Operation Bagel systems, not just in Tactical Prisms, but Inventory, Anti-Corruption Devices, and Blade of the Other. Inventory is your standard increase to carry capacity. Anti-Corruption Devices do just that, reducing corruption gained, but with the added bonus of also reducing agent damage taken. And Blade of the Other is what allows for auto-skill use and enhances their effects. Most of these will be crafted often. With the exception of the inventory item, all gear and equipment have a durability rating. Use it in a run and it will drop, with it providing no stats once broken. Durability is decreased upon completion of a mission. Entering a stage won't cause the equipped gear to drop. A 3 out of 3 will retain its 3 out of 3, but once the stage is finished, be it through extraction or failure, it will drop depending on the difficulty level. 1 for easy or normal, 2 for hard, and 3 for high risk. Unfortunately, you can't cheese this. Gear that's equipped during a run will have its durability decrease at the end. No swapping out a level 20 gear for level 5 so that you can conserve durability on the level 20. Both will take the hit at the end. It's not too big a problem as high rarity gear does have higher durability to make up for it, but it does mean frequently engaging with crafting systems, or more broadly, base development as a whole. Almond Research Station is the new map that houses the mode. In it, you can check all the different associated systems, like the database, store, and hubs. This makes up a base of operations that works as the mode's long-term progression and development, with 5 main sections. The Porceloy Hub is what other systems are gated by. As it's leveled up, it unlocks constructions and upgrades for the rest. One of which is a smart workshop, where items can get crafted, be it gear, Etheric Phantom components, or medical supplies. Note that the higher rank items do demand blueprints, which must be purchased or found on investigations, and crafting does have a real-time aspect associated with it. The R&D Center provides an upgradable skill tree that enhances agents and related systems, like giving more auto skill users, having more shield on start, reducing store prices, and so on. The Depot Hub functions as a storage or retrieve items are held after runs, and then lastly is Bougie Store, with blueprints, resources, and general items for account progression, namely Pyro's Mindscapes, Soul Exuvia upgrades, and other goodies. I'd go on more about them, but I'm out of time, so let's rapid fire through some of the remaining stuff. Operation Bagel has seasons, with quests that provide a unique currency that can then be spent to get important blueprints, as well as a Soul Exuvia overclock item. There's a database, much like Grace from Hollow Zero, which gives polychromes as it's filled out with gear, valuables, equipment, and even access cards. which is another aspect of exploration. They can be found in investigations or bought from the shop and are needed to access restricted areas in the Hollow. Even without them or filling out the database, merely unlocking strong boxes can give out polychromes at times. Talking about strong boxes, they have fixed spawn locations. The coveted electronic strongbox may or may not appear in a given location, but if it's there, it's always in the same place. The same is true for the mechanical strongbox. Not quite as good, but still one of the better options. With distinct spawn points, it means that it's also possible to have both electronic and mechanical strongboxes right by each other on their respective locations. Memorize the spawns for all of the strongboxes and who knows, maybe you luck out with multiple electronic strongboxes very near each other. And there's even funky little gimmicks, like how using the auto-skill ambush in combat gives invulnerability, so you can use it to take no damage even when there's no targetable enemies. I really am out of time though, so let's wrap it up here. Operation Bagel is already hitting live service, so better to leave the rest to experience. I may be the kind of player that likes chasing for high scores on Deadly Assault, but I know molding after an ideal route isn't for everyone. Operation Bagel then offers a different kind of approach to endgame with a clear progression goal. After going into high risk grossly undergeared and losing all of my items and 2.5 million gear coins on a failed investment, there's definitely a pull on me to progress the hub, craft better gear and work down the skill tree. If you do happen to be interested in more guides of this sort, want to see detailed character breakdowns, or learn about niche tech and fundamental game mechanics, why not like, share, subscribe and ring the bell to be notified for when they drop. I've got more videos coming. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.